Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you this morning. I have quite a bit of information to share with you, so I will try to be as efficient as possible and run through them. At the end of the report, if there are any questions or if you would like more detail or copies of the legislation, please let me know. I would be happy to provide that to you. But let's begin with the budget. Last week was the first review of subcommittee recommendations. Every budget was approved by its subcommittee in both the House and the Senate last week. So it's the first chance for us to get a review and see where we might have some concerns. And we do have a couple items of concern that we will need to navigate through the process. And the first one deals with revenue sharing. While the Senate provided the 2% increase that the governor had recommended in her executive budget, they added some language, boilerplate language, that required any county with a retirement benefit system that was underfunded status must dedicate that increase to that system. In the House, however, they only provided a 1% increase. They also added the pension boilerplate, but they also added a requirement that you had to maintain public safety expenditures at the amount from the previous budget cycle. So we're working with specifically the House on that 1% recommendation. We find that unacceptable given this year of the budget where there is money, there isn't cutting of any budgets. We don't quite understand why a 1% increase is provided to a revenue sharing. I know most of this, I will say, is for negotiating purposes with the governor, but it still is something that we're going to continue to work on. The House also did something that was concerning as well, is they want to move to quarterly payments through this budget. The Appropriations Chair, Representative Albert, believes that that would provide more accountability and measuring with the governor's office. The Senate did not include that and doesn't really have an interest in quarterly budgeting, but that's also an issue that we'll have to continue to navigate through with the House. The second issue is the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. While the Senate concurred in the governor's recommendation of $31 million for the MIDC, the House, while they kept the money in, moved it from the LAURA budget, which is the licensing and regulatory affairs budget, over to the judiciary budget. And most of you are new to this committee, but this is something. So this program was originally placed in the judiciary budget, but over concerns that the Supreme Court expressed some constitutional concerns, they moved it to the LAURA budget. In working with the Michigan Association of Counties, we would prefer it moved back to the LAURA budget. So we'll need to work with Representative Leitner in the House to see if we can convince her to move that back to the LAURA budget, where we believe it is probably the best placement of that information. There's also some other line items that I just want to run through to give you notification. Some of these were the same for the House and the Senate, so that's good news. But $14.8 million for county jail reimbursement program, that was concurred in the House and the Senate. $5 million for COVID reimbursement for county jails for housing prisoners. That was only put in by the House. The Senate put a 10% increase in funding for essential public health. The House left it at the governor's recommendation. So that's a good spot for local public health that perhaps we could get a boost for them in their funding. $36 million allocation for federal state opioid response grants. That was in the House and the Senate. In the House, they increased the child care fund to $265 million. The Senate version kept it at $229 million. So we're hopeful that we can keep that House recommendation. $3.5 million for county indirect cost allotments. That was both the House and the Senate. And in the Raise the Age Fund, the House only put $9.1 million, where the Senate version has $14 million. So we have some work there as well. $26 million to fund the certified community behavioral health clinics. It's a demonstration program, both the House and the Senate. $4 million for county veteran service fund grants. That's the House and the Senate. $12.9 million for secondary road patrol program, House and Senate. And $10 million to phase out local CMH drawdown on Medicaid. That's just the Senate. I want to spend a little bit of time on the House because they made a more dramatic cuts to the budget. A lot of that is for negotiation, but I want to bring it to your attention because I'm sure some of the stakeholders will bring it to your attention. Perhaps the most dramatic difference is that the House did not include the extension of a $2 per hour raise for the direct care workers. As you remember, Governor Whitmer did propose that continuing that indefinitely. The Senate went beyond the governor's $2 and raised it 35 cents, $2.35. They also included $2 increase for frontline workers employed by child care institutions. So the total cost in the Senate would be 210 million, where the governor's recommendation was 110. The House also didn't include the governor's Michigan Reconnect or the Future for Frontliners program. Both of those are in the $30 million range. They also didn't include the 235 million for clean water grants and 35 million for debt services for the Flint water crisis. So there's a lot of work to be done. The House did most of this, I think, for negotiating purposes with the governor's office. They wanted to make a point, and they, as you recall from previous updates, they've been very strident in how they worked with the governor's office on the budget, and they continue to do so throughout this process. We don't have an agreement with the governor's office and the Senate and the House on budget numbers to try to get this at a conclusion, but we understand that they actually are now talking to one another and sitting down, and so we're hopeful in the next couple of weeks, perhaps we can get a budget deal. On the House floor this week, you will see a supplemental moving. It is still trying to spend the money that was dedicated to Michigan from last year from the federal government. The House will move theirs this week. The Senate has not yet put theirs together. They're working on it, as I understand it. So as soon as I get that, I will forward that to you for your review. The Senate Majority Leader is also working on a proposal of which he does not have any legislation yet, but it's something that I think we need to pay attention to. And he's attempting to craft legislation that wraps all physical and mental health services for Medicaid recipients under one single program. A lot of this is stemming from a court decision, KB versus Lyon, where a child was moved between CMH and emergency rooms. And so the state of Michigan had to come to an agreement and a settlement on that case. Right now, the Senate Majority Leader's proposal looks very similar to a proposal made in 2017, and it's referred to Section 298 boilerplate. It was not implemented, but since the Majority Leader is uniquely engaged in this issue, I bring this to your attention because I think you will see some movement, and perhaps you'll see some movement of legislation along with the budget process. He does not have any language to review at this time. He does have a slide deck that I sent to many of you, I think a week or two ago, and that's really the only detail that we've been afforded at this time. The Senate is also having their second hearing on a very aggressive election package. It's a 39 bill package. They're having their second hearing. I think you will see that begin to move, but the Senate Majority Leader has made it very clear that he's willing to make changes and take a look at it. I believe that the governor probably will veto most of the package, but they do plan to move forward with it. The House has a less aggressive package. It's kind of a piecemeal approach. It's not a 39 bill package. So you'll see election reform begin to get some hearings, continue hearings over the next couple weeks. The House leaders, Representative Lozinski and Speaker Wentworth, have also agreed to a ethics reform package that I think you will begin to see on the House committee this week. It's part of the package of legislators and governors would no longer be exempt from FOIA requests. Additional prohibitions would prohibit legislative conflicts of interest by banning lawmakers from voting for personal benefit. It would prohibit legislators from lobbying out of state to halt potential conflicts of interest. If you recall, last session, we did have one legislator that was a registered lobbyist in another state. It would ban civil appointment for lobbyists to a state board or commission. It would also prohibit lawmakers or department heads from becoming lobbyists for 2 years after the end of their tenure or their term. But most interesting, and I think we should pay close attention to, is it would end most lame duck legislative activity by requiring the support of a bipartisan supermajority of legislators in each chamber to pass any bills during that period after November on even numbered years. So essentially, they're getting rid of our lame duck session. They would also require a bipartisan support for laws that take effect immediate by requiring a roll call vote with a supermajority support to be required to give bills immediate effect. This is pretty dramatic. If you'll recall, and we've experienced this, lame duck sessions can be very aggressive, especially on even numbers years when legislators are at the end of their tenure. Sometimes that's when most of the work from the legislature is done. So putting a halt to that would be a significant shift on just the legislative pace. So it's something that I think we need to pay attention to. So I also want a couple other issues that we have been watching. The solid waste recycling bills have cleared the House. They're now in the Senate. We're watching those. We have a couple of changes that Kent County would like to make, and we will be advocating for those in the Senate with our senators. Legislation was also introduced last week, which would allow productivity credits within our correction system. So productivity credits established by what they're calling a Safer Michigan Act could be earned upon completion of grants, programs, workforce, or job training, education certificates, and reentering planning. These credits would only be allowed to get you to a performance review. It wouldn't actually decrease your sentence. But it's something that I think you will see in committee in the next couple of weeks. And so those are the major items of interest. It's a lot. I think the legislature is moving pretty quickly on a lot of packages of interest to them, but I wanted to share just a little bit about them for you so that you can have an understanding of what the legislature is working on from now until probably July.
All right. Thank you, Becky. You've been busy.
I have been very busy.
All right. So any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Ponstein.
Morning, Becky. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. So just a couple quick things. So roads and infrastructure, is any movement on what they plan to do for the future? And then the second one, the good news is I'm starting to hear these ads more than the gambling ads, but I see the Pure Michigan ads are up and going. Did that funding get restored and even added to? Because I seem to see them 2-3 times an hour, depending on the program I'm watching.
Yes, to address your first one, if you recall, Governor Whitmer had proposed $300 million for local roads and bridges for repair, something that's desperately needed. Both the House and the Senate have upwards of $260 million dedicated to that. So it's a point of contention, but there's still some significant dollars dedicated to that. Representative Elbert, who is the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, has also indicated that as part of that $5.7 billion that the state government will receive as far as the Recovery Act from the federal government, he would like to dedicate a significant portion of those dollars towards road funding. So I think you're going to see different efforts to put more resources into our roads and bridges. But for the most part right now, we do have money in there almost at the $300 million level that the governor had proposed. With regard to Pure Michigan, I know that the Senate has included funding for Pure Michigan. I will check on the House what they've done with that, but probably the ads that you're seeing are in the current year budget. So let me check to see what they plan to do going forward beginning October 1.
Any other questions or comments? Those online as well.
Commissioner Hennessy has a question.
Commissioner Hennessy.
The Michigan Association of Counties is having its conference this week, and one of its sessions is on septic policy, sort of a lingering issue for concern. Is there anything happening on that front to develop a septic policy?
That's an excellent question, Commissioner. I will work with Dina. She has not shared with me any quick movement on some septic policy. That doesn't mean that there isn't, but let me check with her and I will get back with you today.
Thank you.
Any others? So I do have a couple, Becky, if I could. Back when 298, the concept of integration was floated out there under 298. There's pretty universal condemnation or resistance to that from various, whether it's the CMHA or whether it's the MAC, various associations and so on. Is that, I'm not sure I hear that this time around. The plan looks pretty much, I'd rather review, it looks the same, pretty similar to what 298 was all about. Is the resistance from these various organizations the same as it was back in 2017?
It's coming at a little less aggressive level. And I think it is because of who is leading the effort. I was reminded by Representative Brana Colley, who chairs the House Health Policy Committee, when I met with her last week to talk about this, that when the Senate Majority Leader wanted to move a package, it was a dental therapy assistance. He basically stopped the legislative process until he got what he wanted. He wouldn't move anything off the Senate floor until he got what he wanted. So she reminded me of people are moving carefully because it is the Senate Majority Leader's priority. However, he is open to changes. And I think that's why you haven't seen draft legislation prepared yet. I think he's still meeting with stakeholders and very willing to hear concerns and really consider policy changes. So I think that would be something that either through the Lakeshore Regional Entity or through Kent County, if we wanted to recommend some changes or thoughts, he would be open to understanding those. He still believes in the concept of the single entity, which could be problematic. But I would recommend that we put some suggestions and comments together for his consideration.
Has MAC taken a position on this?
I'm not sure if they've taken a formal position. I have had conversations with their team about this program, and I know they've been meeting with legislators. But I don't know if they have a formal position on this yet.
Okay. I thought
Some
that
of
they had a position on 98, but maybe.
You know, some of the reason why I think people have not taken a position is because we don't know specifically what we're dealing with. I mean, we have a slide deck, which is very concerning, but we don't have legislation to review. And I think once the drafts are available, we will be able to, you'll see more entities, I think, come out with more aggressive positions.
Oh, we'll watch it. So the other question on the direct care wage authorization, is there an appreciation of how disrupting even the debate is throughout the industry? I mean, for those of us that deal with that, to have it and then not have it and then wonder where it's going to come from next month is devastating. So is that appreciated at that level, the discussion that they need to have a long-term sustainable funding for this?
You know, that's an excellent question, because it is, some of these, I guess, omissions by the House clearly were done for negotiation purposes. I'm sure it's going to be a very, very difficult vote when that measure, if it's still included on the House floor, because many legislators are very supportive of that $2 increase. It's important to our direct care workers to have that. So it'll be interesting to see how long they can sustain that position. As I indicated, the Senate not only endorsed it, but increased it. So they're in the minority on that clearly. And I think they're going to have a very difficult time getting their members to vote for that if it comes to the House floor, because that is a priority. And I think they understand that could be difficult for many stakeholders that are depending on that consistency of that wage.
Very disruptive.
Very.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Don't see any others online. So again, thank you, Becky, for all your work and monitoring this for us. And we look forward to your next report.
Thank you very much.